Okay, shall we start?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. So, I'm going to discuss about board level interconnect cross-check estimation. We will see the basics of the crosstalk, mainly in a board level system. And before that, I should thank the SSN College management and EC department professors, Dr. Nagarajan, Dr. K.T. Selvan, Krishnasamy Selvan, Dr. Mani, right, and Dr. Srinivasan, right, for arranging this session. So with these few points, let us go into the subject, right? So the important aspect of today's high-speed, systems, for example, your high-speed laptops, computers, where you have motherboards, right, operating at very high clock speeds, and also the interconnect buses, which are operating at a higher data rate. So while we design these systems, we should understand that the board design is not a simple PCB design, but we require a transmission line design methodology, because at higher data rates, the length of the copper layer in a PCB and all conductors have to be considered as transmission lines. So the theory is not a simple digital logic theory. Even though it is a digital system, we need to evolve a transmission line theory for the design of a high-speed board. Today's computers work at very high processor speeds, and the interconnect buses are also operating at very high data rates. So our design should be a transmission line oriented, since the boards have to be considered as a transmission line unit because of higher frequencies. Once transmission line theory is applied, impedance matching, right, impedance, characteristic impedance, reflections, all these high frequency effects have to be considered in detail. Otherwise, our digital board, even though it is digital, will not function properly. This is the requirement for this high-speed digital design, where transmission line and EMF-based approach is required. So I understand in the morning session, you would have been given a treatment of electromagnetic concepts for high-speed signal integrity or high-speed digital data links. So with these points, let us go into the details. So most of the materials have been taken from the particular paper, design of PCB and MCM for high-speed digital systems, and you will be more surprised to see most of the design aspects have been developed by Intel. So this is a very interesting aspect. As you all know, Intel is well known for its processors, which are operating at very high speeds. So if you want to be well versed in the digital design, our subject knowledge, basic digital logic theory will not be sufficient, because the real-time digital design, high-speed digital design requires EMF concepts and more precisely transmission line concepts for high-speed design. Without a transmission line theory, one cannot design a high-speed digital circuit. So those who are teachers, kindly pass on this message to your students. Majority of them may be very happy to get a internship in a digital design company like Intel India or other companies like Motorola or any other chip manufacturing company. For those students, it is more important that over and above their digital logic interest or digital logic basics, they should be more thorough in the transmission line theory so that they can have an opportunity to work in such high-speed digital design projects. And most importantly, the third book, which I am showing here, the high-speed signal propagation, advanced black magic. In fact, this is the second version of the book by Johnson & Johnson and Graham. Earlier, the topic of the book or title of the book was High-Speed Digital Design, a Black Magic. So some of you might be surprised about this title because they use the word black magic, because at higher frequencies, digital operation, you get into a lot of problems which cannot be understood. It was like a black magic. Then with the advent of the topics like signal integrity, where the signal propagation in a board is analyzed using transmission line theory, they were able to identify majority of the problems which have occurred, especially at the higher frequencies. So those who are interested in these topics, my suggestion is to go through this book. This will be very informative. The topics what we plan is the basic concepts, transmission line effects, and we will spend more time on crosstalk calculation based on coupling. So this is based on simple circuit concepts so that you can understand how crosstalk take place in a board in a very simple manner. Next is a more rigorous treatment based on circuit tools like PSpice. Okay, now we have understood about coupling, how to decouple. There are various techniques. We will see few techniques for decoupling. So decoupling from the power supply and how to build a good circuit board, how to route the high speed signals, terminations. We are all well versed with impedance matching, termination in subjects like transmission lines. The same aspects have to be involved or to be used in the design of high-speed boards also. So terminations are quite important. And of course, how to design a power distribution. Even though I have given all the aspects of a high-speed digital board design, depending upon the time availability, we will see the advanced concepts. So what is important with high-speed digital? Why we are more bothered? Today, if you see the mobile phones, high-speed computers, so without these two gadgets, mobile phones and high-speed computers, either laptops or desktops, today our life would be very difficult. Today's laptop computer gives you connectivity. You are able to watch movies, listen to songs, also a communication equipment, right? By connecting a small dongle or connecting to a wired internet. So all these gadgets work at very high frequencies. This has to be understood. As I told you earlier, the recent version of Intel, that processor works at the speed of around 3 gigahertz. I don't know what is the latest trend, might be still better. So the signals coming out of the processor, they have to be taken or routed to the memory, to some other blocks of the motherboard in the PCB traces. So higher data rates lead to a lot of problems, and we should very clearly understand that digital data is not a single frequency. This is a very, very important aspect which you should understand. An analog signal will be narrow band, or a single tone has a very, very narrow frequency component. On the other hand, a digital signal is a broad band. It has frequency right from DC to few gigahertz. So we will see the spectral components. That is why tackling high-speed digital data is difficult or different compared to analog signals. So simple tricks are not possible. This point, higher order harmonics are necessary to create a perfect square wave or a perfect pulse. And you have number of critical signals in a high-speed system. Digital signals are more tolerant to distortion. Switching creates high currents. So these aspects are factors which are special for high-speed digital systems. We will take a very simple example. This is a digital signal, a 50 megahertz signal, right? You know 50 megahertz, the time period is 20 nanosecond. The rise time is 1 nanosecond. Fall time is 1 nanosecond. And what is the bandwidth of this particular 50 megahertz digital signal? The bandwidth formula I have given 0.35 by TR. TR is rise time. So the bandwidth comes to, since it is 1 nanosecond, the bandwidth comes to 350 megahertz. So the same 50 megahertz signal, if it has a larger rise time, let us say if it is, the on time is 10 nanosecond. In 10 nanosecond, if it has a rise time of 2 nanoseconds, then the bandwidth will be still less. Let us see how the frequency spectrum of high-speed digital signals vary. So in order to satisfactorily transfer this digital signal, my system should have a minimum bandwidth of 350 megahertz. Otherwise, the signal will be distorted. So this slide gives you the spectrum of a single pulse by taking FFT. So you all know the frequency domain tells you the bandwidth occupied by the signal, which is obtained by taking the FFT of the signal in the time domain. So the same 50 megahertz signal, I can have 10 nanosecond rise time, or I can have 1 nanosecond rise time. So the rise time alone is varied whereas the pulse width is held constant, 10 nanosecond, right? On time, 10 nanoseconds of time. So for a 10 nanosecond rise time, that means it is almost like a triangle. 10 nanosecond rise time, you see the frequency components up to 100 megahertz, whereas the same 50 megahertz pulse with 1 nanosecond rise time requires bandwidth up to 200 megahertz. So you understand the bandwidth requirement for the same 50 megahertz signal when the rise time is reduced. So rise time is reduced, you require more bandwidth. Okay, coming to a pulse train, still it is complicated. So we don't transmit a single pulse, but in a real-time digital system, it is a pulse train. Now pulse train, you see, for a 10 nanosecond rise time, it goes up to some 0.6 significant components are present, 0.6 gigahertz. Please understand, we are transmitting only 50 megahertz, but the frequency components present until 0.6 gigahertz or 600 megahertz. If the same 50 megahertz signal has 1 nanosecond rise time and the pulse train has components up to, you are able to see 800 megahertz, significant components are present. So now we will have a question. What do you see in a 20 megahertz oscilloscope when a 20 megahertz square wave is given as input? I have given 4 answers. When a 20 megahertz square wave is given to a 20 megahertz oscilloscope, what is it you will see? So I want to have a small feedback from you. I will unmute. I think Dr. Nagarajan, can you unmute?
Sir, participants can unmute themselves. Unmute பண்ணிக்கலாம் sir.
Yes, I need some participant to give an answer for this so that it is really interactive.
Crispin, you can try.
Yes, please.
Crispin, unmute yourself.
I think the participants can unmute and then make a try.
20 megahertz square wave.
So I am giving 20 megahertz square wave to a 20 megahertz oscilloscope. That means the oscilloscope has a bandwidth of only 20 megahertz. So the answer you are saying is first one. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other answer by other participants? Any other participant? Okay. Let us.
Jagannathan sir, you can unmute and you can talk. Jagannathan sir has given in comments, sir.
Comments,
None of the above. None of the above he has given. Jagannathan.
Right.
Mr.
Then
Jagannathan.
we have 2 responses. Right.
Yes.
If anybody is coming, let us wait for a second and then we will go. Any other answer? Okay. Okay. We will go to the answer. So the answer is none of the above. We will see why. So I am giving a 20 megahertz signal to a 20 megahertz oscilloscope. That means you are having only the first harmonic because the oscilloscope bandwidth does not permit more than that. So you are seeing only a 20 megahertz sine wave. You cannot see a 20 megahertz square wave. Yes, the participants understood? Yes. So the idea is a square wave consists of number of harmonics as per the Fourier series theory. you will have number of harmonics. So otherwise, you can say any non-sinusoidal signal can be decomposed into a sum of number of sinusoidal harmonics, right? So square wave itself is composed of number of harmonics of the sine wave. So the first harmonic alone is a sine wave of 20 megahertz. So if you allow first and third harmonic, so 20 megahertz and 60 megahertz. So if I see a 20 megahertz square wave using a 60 megahertz oscilloscope, this is what will be seen. Okay, 1 to 5th harmonic, you get a wave like this. Only if you allow the 21st harmonic, 1 to 21st harmonic, you are getting almost a square wave. Okay, so what is the bandwidth of my oscilloscope required? Yes, any answer? Yes, any participant? So as a thumb rule, at least you should have 10 times. That means if you are measuring a 50 megahertz signal, you will be able to get a good representation or a good square wave if it is 500 megahertz. So more the bandwidth, you will be able to get a perfect square wave. So for my previous question, since that answer is not there, right? The answer is 20 megahertz sine wave. That is the answer, correct answer. So that is not there. So none of the above is the correct answer. So now you see in a digital signal, when you are transmitting, let us say 50 megahertz, your components are present till 800 megahertz. So your board design or the PCB trace should be capable of handling that bandwidth or the last frequency component of that signal. So this is what makes high-speed digital design more complicated or more difficult compared to a simple analog narrowband signal transmission. So now, when such broadband signals are transmitted through the boards, the conductors have to be considered as transmission lines for the best representation and for best analysis. Simple models like RC calculation will not apply at higher frequencies. It is possible to predict the quality of the signal only when you apply transmission line calculations. And we can use different terminations for the transmission line and see our result. Okay, why should I take transmission line into effect? Because as the frequency is very high, the propagation time between one point to other point of the board is very significant. That is what you call it as transit time. We may have a PCB whose length is 10 centimeter or 15 centimeters, but the time taken by the signal to propagate through a transmission line can be calculated using the velocity and the dielectric constant of the medium. Normally, PCBs are more commonly made with materials like FR4 dielectric. So the dielectric constant is around 4.2 or 4.4. So with this, we can calculate what is the velocity at which the signal travels in a board. Once we know the velocity, we can calculate the transit time. Now, the transit time should be compared with the rise time of the signal. So, when the rise time is less than 2.5 times of the time delay of the signal through the trace, then we need to consider that line as a transmission line. Alternately, in the frequency domain, if the trace length is larger than 1/7 of the largest wavelength, that is the uppermost frequency edge, then you have to consider the conductor as a transmission line. So you see the rise time as it increases, right? You can go for a larger trace length. This is one indicating one value of dielectric constant, another for a different value. So as the rise time increases, you can go for a larger trace length with the transmission line limit. If my rise time is very less, you have to reduce the transmission distance or the trace length. That is why in high frequency, it is a thumb rule that the lead length or lead wires have to be made very small or as small as possible. And you should have come across high frequency components mostly are surface mount devices in order to reduce the capacitance and inductance effect, which are more predominant at high frequencies. So now let us take a very simple case. If you have the same signal, 50 megahertz signal, through a 40 millimeter non-terminated line, that means a PCB trace. You see there is no difference between the input and the output. They are almost in phase, right? Since it is a very short length. The same signal, when it is transmitted through a long line, 300 millimeter, which is also not terminated, you see that you get a different wave due to reflections. Even though both are not terminated, the longer transmission line leads to transmission line effect, and because of non-termination, there is a reflection. So the waveform, what is expected at the output, right, undergoes reflections, and it is not same as that of the input. So this is a very important effect in a transmission line due to reflection. Next, what we are more concerned is crosstalk, right? Crosstalk means whenever there are two lines which are situated nearby, one line has a digital signal and the next line is empty or it is not having any signal. Because of the proximity of these two lines and due to these reflections, there is a coupling of signal from one line or the signal line to the neighboring free line. So this will create a signal at the output of the passive line and create crosstalk. So this is very important in high-speed digital design. So we need to understand more about the transmission lines, especially from the board point of view. So we can have boards or PCBs with various configurations. We can have a microstrip in the top and you can have a ground plane, which can be in the bottom or it can be embedded inside, or you can have a strip line which is embedded and a ground plane on both sides. So various types of transmission lines are available, and these in fact are the realization of transmission lines in a PCB, or otherwise a PCB having these features is considered as a transmission line. So in a single layer, you can have one top conductor and you can have dielectric and one bottom conductor. In a multiple layer PCB, you can have one top conductor, one more layer, another layer embedded, and then another layer. So in multi-layer PCBs, such designs are common. And you need to consider these dimensions to implement the high frequency effect and to make the board work at high frequencies properly. So when you have a PCB, the dielectric constant, the relative permittivity, these are very important. Whatever you come across dielectric constant in capacitor, the same idea is used in a PCB also. In the previous case, this is your dielectric. These are conductors. These are conductors. This is dielectric. So the permittivity of vacuum is given. Permittivity of material can be calculated, and there is a capacitance associated with any two lines separated by a dielectric. Next is the loss tangent. It's a very important parameter at high frequency. So otherwise it is called as tan delta. So these things you might have come across in transmission line, which is very important in the design of PCB. So you know this expression for tan delta, which is inversely proportional to your frequency. Some of the materials which are commonly used for PCBs, FR4, dielectric constant, loss tangent, and other commonly used materials like Teflon, polyimide, so on. So the loss tangent also tells about how much is the dielectric loss taking place in that medium. And next is the magnetic permeability. Most of you know it is a ratio of flux density to the field strength, right? And the relative permeability of the material. So you should be aware of these two medium parameters in order to design a high-speed digital circuit. So the basic transmission line diagram is represented like this. You have a driver and this is your load or termination, or it may be a next IC. This may be one IC, and in between this you have the copper clad or line in the board, which is modeled as a transmission line. So the moment transmission line model is used, you know the standard components which are R, L, G and C. So this model is used to evaluate the transmission line effects in the board. This is very important, the signal velocity. So previously I told you that signal velocity gives you the time taken for the signal to travel between one point to another point in the board, or otherwise it is called the transit time. This transit time has to be compared with the rise time of the signal in order to identify whether the transmission effects are going to be significant or not. So the velocity of signal is calculated using this formula, which is known. And the impedance of the board has to be evaluated. This is very commonly known to you. Z0 is equal to root of L by C in a lossless case. For your information, the characteristic impedance is always a real number. This is for your information. Even though L and C and the reactance offered is frequency dependent, Z0 characteristic impedance is always a real number. Next is loss of the signal in the board. It is measured in dB per meter, and you know the reasons, that is resistive loss due to resistance in the conductor, dielectric loss due to the polarization of dielectric material, radiation loss as the conductor may radiate or work as an antenna. Resistive loss, we all know, due to the bulk resistivity of the conductor, and we know the formula, right? And you can calculate this very standard concept. The most important aspect is at high frequency, not only the resistance offered in the DC condition, resistance offered at the higher frequency is significantly different due to skin effect. So we see that the skin depth, right, at higher frequencies, only a thin layer of conductor transports the current. So even though your conductor may be having a physically thickness or physically thick medium, only a small layer is used for conduction. So the depth of conduction or skin depth is given by this formula, and it is inversely proportional to frequency. So what is the impact? So we all know that resistance is given by, if you see the previous one, 1 by sigma omega into T. This is the line thickness. But at higher frequency, due to skin effect, this line thickness becomes del S, or what you call skin depth. But skin depth itself is inversely proportional to frequency. So now you see the resistance become frequency dependent. This is very, very important. As already we have seen, the same square wave with a lesser rise time has larger frequency component, and that will give rise to a different resistance compared to a same 50 megahertz signal with a large rise time, as it has a less frequency component. So it is interesting to see that the resistance at higher frequency becomes more, or otherwise the resistance becomes higher. Same conductor, same thickness, same material, same dielectric, same board, resistance increases at higher frequency. Naturally, the loss also increases. Next is the dielectric loss, which is also function of frequency, as we have seen from the tan delta. Radiation loss, because as we see that the wire length or the conductor length in a PCB, if it becomes a function of lambda, automatically we all know that any wire whose length is function of lambda, then it becomes a resonant system and it may radiate. We all know that lambda by 2 antenna, we know basic dipole, and the system of a longer length may radiate effectively, or if it is not resonant, it may radiate ineffectively, but it will definitely radiate. Next is an interesting aspect, dispersion, because we are talking about a square wave which is consisting of number of frequency components. Each frequency travels with its own velocity, thereby at the other end of the board, each and every component will reach a different point of time. Therefore, the input may be a square wave, but the output is not a square wave, it is a distorted signal. And it may be very serious at the digital board if the operating frequency is very high, and because of distortion, there may be losses or interference, or it may lead to error in the calculation. Next is what is our point of interest. When you have two signals which are propagating in two lines, there is a mutual coupling. So based on the transmission line theory, we said that each wire conductor or a PCB trace is modeled as RLGC. So assuming that two lines are close by and each line has an inductive effect, there is a coupling between these two inductance by means of a mutual inductance. Thereby there is a crosstalk. So the crosstalk is based on the forward crosstalk coefficient, backward crosstalk coefficient, and TD, which is the transit time delay. So the forward and backward crosstalk coefficients are given by these expressions, where the characteristic impedance of the line plays a very important role, as well as the time delay of that particular signal, right? Your LM is what you have as the mutual inductance, which is coupling the two lines, right? And CM is a capacitance which is responsible for connecting line 1 to line 2. Even though there is no physical capacitor, because of the dielectric between two transmission lines or two conductors, it provides a capacitive effect. So the forward and backward crosstalk coefficients depend on all these factors. Next is reflections. As I told you, this may be an IC, this may be a end terminator, or may be the next IC, and this is your PCB trace, right, which has a impedance of 50. So we all know from transmission line theory, the impedance of the source and the load should be matched. Otherwise, you will have reflections. So the reflections is given by this expression, where Z0 is the characteristic impedance and Z1 is the impedance on the front side. So if Z1 is equal to R2 equal to 25 and Z0 equal to 50, this is 50, line is 50, but the load is 25, then there is a reflection. So what happens? There is a overshoot, and this is what you see. So because of this, there is a reflection which has a voltage level more than the input. Right, so this is the effect of reflection. Next, we all know that in a PCB there may be holes, right, what we call as vias, which is modeled as the inductance and capacitance as a T model, and it is very difficult to do the calculation by mathematical basis. So you need to go for a computational model. Now let us see the basic coupling in a PCB based on common impedance, electric field coupling, and magnetic field coupling. Nagarajan, Dr. Nagarajan there?
Sir, சொல்லுங்க sir.
Time இருக்கா? இப்போ what is the?
Yes sir, you are having another 15. We started late only, so you are having another 15-20 minutes, sir.
Okay, good.
20 minutes, sir.
20 minutes. So we will see about this common impedance coupling, electric field coupling, and magnetic field coupling, so that you will understand how this is going to affect the high frequency board design. So common impedance means when two circuits are sharing a common ground or a common impedance, that leads to coupling. So some of you might have noticed, whenever you are switching on your air conditioners or mixer grinders, you might have noticed the lights getting flickered, right? Whenever there is a higher capacity load switched on. Why this is occurring? Because momentarily these high capacity loads, they draw more current, right? And this will create a pulse current which returns in the same ground. So this leads to reduced voltage or increased voltage momentarily for the other loads connected to the same circuit, thereby the lights flicker because they all share the same common ground. If it is a single phase, the same neutral line is used for all the loads. It may be occurring in a DC circuit also when you have the same ground plane. You see this equivalent circuit. I have one circuit here, outer loop carries the current I1. It has source S1 and resistance of source RS1, and then this is the load for the first loop. Then you have another loop which is having a different voltage source and different load. But both these circuits are having a common return path or a common ground plane in which the return current flows. So the first circuit current I1 also flows through this return path having resistance R return. Second circuit also allows current to flow through the same R return. Right? So two loops are there, but they share a common return path modeled as a return resistance or return. So what we see is, even though there is no current flow through this current second loop I2, the current flow through I1 will create a voltage drop here which forms a part of this circuit, and that leads to a undesirable voltage across this load RL2, which is called crosstalk. Because of current in the outer loop I1, there is a voltage drop across this load. When current I1 is flowing, we require voltage across this load in the first loop. We don't want any voltage here. Unfortunately, since both are sharing the same return resistance or return path, the current flow in the first loop will have an impact in the second loop, even though there is no voltage. This is called crosstalk, right? Even if some voltage is available, due to this crosstalk, there may be a different voltage, right? If these two are signals, then definitely the crosstalk will affect the performance of the second circuit. So when we do a small calculation of voltage, writing the loop equation, we get this expression for circuit 2. When Vs2, which is nothing but the voltage of the second circuit, that is set to 0, we still require, we get a current I2 which is equal to VRL2 by RL2, right? So that leads to a value of voltage at VRL2. When Vs2 is 0, we don't expect any voltage at VRL2, but from the equation, since they are sharing the same ground return, there will be a voltage at this second circuit due to the first one. So the crosstalk is defined in dB as 20 log VRL2 by VRL1 when Vs2 is 0. Vs2 is the source voltage in the second circuit. So solving this equation, we find out that crosstalk expression is 20 log R return into RL2 by RL1 divided by this expression. So you see, the return resistance plays a very important role, right, in contributing to the crosstalk. So for a simple example, if you do a calculation with these values, assuming that the resistance of the ground path is 100 milliohms, that means 0.1 ohm. You see the crosstalk between the two circuit is minus 60 dB. That means a signal voltage of 5 volts in circuit 1 will create 5 millivolt of noise in circuit 2. This numerical calculation tells you about the impact of crosstalk when you have a 5 volts circuit. If your second circuit is tolerating 5 millivolts, then the impact is not there. But when 5 millivolt is not tolerable, the second circuit is very sensitive, then it will malfunction. So the impedance of the ground path, if it is less than the impedance of the either circuit, otherwise the return path will severely attenuate the signal. So voltage drop across the return path, right? What is the expression, right? The return path, the voltage drop, right? So we see the expression for crosstalk, right? So this you can compare with this expression, right? So what you see is the return path resistance is very important determining the crosstalk. So common impedance coupling is independent of the frequency, right, as per this expression, but it has resistance. But if you go to very high frequency, the resistance itself is a function of frequency as per skin effect. Hence, that also has to be considered. At high frequency, resistance of the wire varies due to skin effect. Now we will see electric field coupling. You have two wires or two conductors in a board, right? And what is the coupling? So this is the equivalent circuit. So each wire or conductor is modeled as a line with resistance RS1, source voltage and load. The outer is representing one circuit, inner is another one. Between them you have a capacitance, and between each to ground also you have a capacitance, right? So this is models a common impedance, common coupling between two wires with electric field. So electric field always modeled as capacitor. So the crosstalk, as per the definition, the voltage dropped in load 2 divided by voltage dropped in load 1, and you have to take 20 log of that when second is 0. So this circuit is redrawn. So you can redraw this circuit. Now, if you get the expression by making some approximations, you get the expression as 20 log RS2 parallel RL2 divided by this. So here you have the reactance offered by the capacitance between the first electrode and the second electrode, and the source resistance, load resistance 2, and then the parallel combination. So you see the crosstalk is a function of the capacitance between the two lines, right? And the load resistance and the source resistance. So if you want to calculate, a typical example is given. So RS1, RS2 is given, capacitance is given. So if you have a PCB with the signal wires above conducting plane, length of the wire is given, wire radius is given, then using these formulas we can find capacitance C11 and C22. C12 also can be found out. Then you see the crosstalk at 50 megahertz, right, is minus 40 dB. So what we can see is it is not uncommon or it is usual practice that between two lines there is a electric field coupling which will lead to even a minus 40 dB coupling, right? So minus 40 dB means 10 power minus 4. So if you have 1 volt pulse in one layer or one conductor, so you get 10 power minus 4 of that voltage in the other layer or other conductor, right? So that is what you mean by crosstalk. So coming to magnetic field coupling, since electric field coupling is modeled with capacitor, as you all know, magnetic field coupling can be modeled with inductor. So these are two lines. As we have seen, there is a inductance component in each of the lines. These inductance will have a mutual inductance between them and magnetic field coupling take place. So this is the equivalent circuit. There is a magnetic field coupling between the two lines, and we can see with some assumptions the expressions for self-inductance and mutual inductance. We can do the calculations and find the expressions, right, for M12, mutual inductance 1 and 2 in terms of nanohenry per meter. By knowing the length of the line, we can calculate what is M12, right, or L1, and the voltage induced in the loop 2, that is called the crosstalk, right? So the expression for crosstalk we can have. So in this expression, the reactance, right, of L22, that is j omega L22, comes the denominator, and in the numerator you will have the mutual inductance term. So this expression gives you the crosstalk due to magnetic field coupling. Typical example, if you see, for an example, 10 megahertz, right, L11, M12 is calculated, and you see the crosstalk in the order of minus 23 dB for these given values. So minus 20 dB means it is 100 times down. Minus 30 dB means 1000 times down. So for this given data, these numerical examples will tell you the order of voltage coupled due to electric field coupling and magnetic field coupling in a PCB, right? So for various frequencies, the crosstalk levels can be calculated, right? And for different frequencies, different rise times you can calculate, and more the frequency, lesser the rise time, more the coupling. That is what is more important. So with these slides, I think Dr. Narajan,
Sir?
shall we
Yes, sir.
close and ask for a feedback?
Yes, sir. We can ask now itself, sir. If the people are having queries, they can unmute and they can ask the queries.
So
I request the participants, if they are having queries, you can unmute yourself and then ask, put your queries to Professor Ganesh Madan, sir.
yes,
At least feedback, Crispin.
yes. Have you understood the concepts, right? Or have I made these things clear? So the objective of our presentation.
Crispin, mic is not
The
connected, sir.
presentation-
Yes, yes. Continue.
Sir, the presentation we understood very well. It was very clear and it was more informative. Thank you.
So I would like to share one more board, right? Let us, okay, all these things we have seen in theory. I will share some more, right? Okay. One more slide. So, is it visible, Dr. Narajan?
No, sir.
Is it visible?
You can do new sharing,
second.
sir.
New share. Once again, I don't know. Stop share. Is it visible now?
No, sir.
Screen.
Only your video is coming, sir.
Now, it says stop share. I don't know. I think I don't know why it is not sharing, right? Stop share.
Stop share கொடுத்துட்டு நியூ ஷேர்னு கொடுத்துருங்க சார். ஷேர் ஸ்க்ரீன்ல நியூ ஷேர்னு.
I don't know, there is some problem with this, right?
ஸ்டார்டட்
Resume
ஸ்க்ரீன்
share.
ஷேரிங் வருது. ஸ்டார்டட் ஸ்க்ரீன் ஷேரிங் வருது, ஆனா blank-ஆ தான் சார் இருக்கு ஸ்க்ரீன்.
Now?
No, sir.
Resume share. New share. Right. I think now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Clear, sir. We are able
Right.
to see.
Okay. So, for benefit of the participants, this is a high frequency board, right? Which has a filter. This is a SAW filter, which is mounted in a board, right? You see this light green, right? These are all ground planes. You have a ground plane on the other side of the board. On the top layer also you have the ground plane, and this is the signal plane. Input is output. On both sides you have the ground plane. This is also a ground plane, and the ground plane of the filter is also given. On the reverse side of the board also you have, and you also see number of holes. Yes, right? So this are the specifications given by the filter manufacturer, how to fabricate a board in order to fix this filter for best performance. So it is not just a filter which is operating at 940 megahertz, close to 1 gigahertz, right? When such a filter component is fixed in a board, you need to maintain the characteristic impedance in the input port as well as the output port. And also you should have a uniform transmission line. This is a transmission line. The output transmission line, this is a 50 ohm connector. This is the input transmission line, 50 ohm connector. And these are all ground planes in the top of the board. The bottom of the board I haven't shown. Bottom also you will have the ground plane, right? So this design of the board is given as a specification by the filter manufacturer. You see, this is the specification of a filter at 940 megahertz. So they give the single-ended source impedance, load impedance, as 50, and they give the attenuations at various frequencies in dB. Also, the VSWR is given, right? Even though this is an analog board, I am showing for a high frequency application, the board design itself is important or equally important to that of the circuit design. For a simple filter component, which is a SMD component, you need to have all these parameters, mostly the insertion loss, source impedance, load impedance. Since it is a filter, they have given amplitude ripple, and then the VSWR attenuation levels at various frequencies. This is a surface acoustic wave filter, and its frequency response, mostly they give the impedance in Smith chart, right? So this is a frequency response and impedance, and this is the size of the LC filter chip, very small size. So this filter is a component given by the manufacturer, surface mount device. Over that, this board design has been made for operating this filter at higher frequency. Impedance matching, input, output. The connector also should be 50 ohms impedance matching, and this is matched to this SAW filter using a transmission line which is 50 ohms. Input transmission line, output transmission line, right? And the holes vias are also given in the ground plane to optimize the performance. If you don't do this board design, you cannot get the filter response, or the filter will not function. So this gives you a idea of a high frequency board design, right? With all the parameters like characteristic impedance, input impedance, output impedance, insertion loss, right? Board design, so on. So now I'm closing this board design slide. So any doubts, please feel free to ask.